All right, it is 3 after. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to cover, you know, the platform-centric approach to navigating DORA and NIS2, the EU regulatory compliance requirements. Um, to hop to the next slide here, just wanted to let you know that we will have future webinars and meetups for the Live on ServiceNow interactive series. So if you want to go ahead and scan the barcode, you can see what the schedule is and get signed up for future sessions. And just a few housekeeping items. Just to let everybody know that your line is muted. And if you could, please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions throughout the session. Feel free to introduce yourself when you're asking the question. We'd love to know who you are. And just to let you know that this session is being recorded and it will be shared on the ServiceNow community and on YouTube for future playback. And then after the webinar ends, you will be prompted to fill out a survey. So if you could please provide your feedback, it would be greatly appreciated so we can improve these sessions going forward. And also, if you have any future interests that you would like to cover, that would be great. All right, just a real quick introduction of the speakers today. Myself, Derek Kitzelman, I'm Outbound Product Manager for the ITOM business unit. We also have Shri Subramanian. He is the Senior Director for ITOM Product Management. And then we also have Anish Bhatnagar. He is the head of our risk products, right? So we're all from ServiceNow here. Let's go ahead and jump into the next slide. Just to let you know that there potentially are some forward-looking statements in here. And, from a safe harbor perspective, please don't make any investment or purchasing decisions based off of future capabilities, right? Because roadmaps change. But for the most part, we're going to stick to what's already released. But if we do talk any forward-looking statements, you get the drill. All right. Quick agenda. We're going to talk about ServiceNow and the DORA NIS regulations, how to build a resilient organization with the platform, and we're going to have a couple demos, both an ITOM demo as well as a risk demo here. And then we'll, time permitting, we got a lot to cover. We'll jump into a quick Q&A. All right. So, why is this important, right? It really is, when we think about DORA regulation and the NIS2 directive, if non-compliance really results in, fines, right? And, you look at the fines, 2% of annual turnover for non-compliance and up to 10 million euros or 2% of the annual revenue, whichever is higher. So expensive if not getting in compliance with this regulatory framework. So when we think about the ServiceNow platform and that journey towards operational resilience, right? We start off with the CMDB discovery, populating it through discovery and Service Graph connectors, and then leveraging service mapping and the common service data model to build out business context within the CMDB, right? So understanding what that infrastructure and technology is supporting, and then leverage pre-built integrations from those system of records to bring in additional data to help drive those workflows. And then also thinking about, from a service assurance perspective, leveraging AI ops within the platform to ensure that you've got service reliability and operational resilience, right? And our service reliability management, really that's, helping those teams self-serve and understand, and be able to manage their own services, register them, build out rules, et cetera. So let's go talk about visibility. Really foundational to technology excellence in any of the workflows within the ServiceNow platform. And really specific to operational resilience is, AI ops, being able to ingest telemetry from any source, bind those to CIs to understand the impact and remediate those quickly, right? And then, of course, risk and compliance that we'll really dive in today, security, vulnerability management, and then, thinking about change management and DevOps change and incident management and major incident management. All of those outcomes are improved by having a complete and accurate CMDB with business context, right? And when we think about, ServiceNow as that data platform for any type of regulatory framework, really it's capturing that infrastructure data, getting that business context, and then pulling in that non-discoverable data, from other sources, whether that's manual or other systems of record, right? And we think about that multi-source perspective that the ServiceNow CMDB provides. So using discovery and to hydrate the CMDB, and then pulling in data from your existing investments, those other sources of truth via the Service Graph connectors to really add additional context to the ServiceNow CMDB to create that single data platform with that one data model and centralized intelligence for your organization, right? And then gaining that business context through pulling in the discovery data, leveraging service mapping, and then using the common service data model to structure your services within the platform, ultimately building out that business context, right? And then, one of the things that we really wanted to call out here is, the fact that, we are developing those service graph connectors along with our partners. We're leveraging, out of the box architectures, following the data model, and leveraging the IRE to ensure that we have, reduced amount or eliminate duplication, and ensure that the appropriate sources are reporting to the appropriate targets within the ServiceNow CMDB, whether that's at the table level or the attribute level. And that, given that we're releasing these through the store, we're allowed, to do that on a very quick rotation. So we're staying ahead of that innovation. So, the next thing I did want to talk about and touch on is our ServiceNow Predictive AI Ops solution. Of course, not all business services are created equal. Some of them are highly revenue generating, very critical to the business, and other ones aren't. And you want to make sure that you understand that business context from a prioritization. So when things do happen, right, we get that, data into the CMDB about your cloud resources, the different applications that are running on your IaaS in the cloud or on-prem. Are they running databases? Is it cloud native, running containerized workflows? So on and so forth. And understanding, as we ingest the telemetry data from your monitoring solutions, whether that's metric data, event data, log data, distributed tracing, et cetera, we bind those to those technology stacks, and then we have business context within the ServiceNow CMDB, whether it's machine generated or people generated, right? And we leverage, the capabilities around alert correlation, creating actionable rules to handle these alerts, whether that's auto-generating an incident or kicking off a remediation to go out and resolve some of these things. And it could be also identifying anomalous behavior, whether that's through metric data or through log data, and responding to anomalies before that critical threshold is breached, right? Ultimately getting to a state to where you can predict when things are going to happen, prevent any type of degradation or outage, and then automate those workflows when issues do arise, and ideally before the end user ever feels any type of degradation or outage. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand this off to Shri, who's going to do a really quick demo for you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. A few things I'll reiterate, from my standpoint. What is fascinating with ServiceNow's platform story is our connected intelligence. So we have one data model where once you have the asset inventory, then you tie all the knots with ownership, lifecycle management activities, and even non-discoverable elements like end of life, end of support data sets that you curate from your software asset management normalization library. So the connected intelligence is what we are going to go do deep dive today in the demo. And the journey that Derek shared is a fascinating one. So today you're going to see a demo of how the assets gets discovered and how you add that service context. And once you have the powerful data story around your infrastructure, services, ownership, then using our CSDM data model, you attach non-discoverable no business context to the infrastructure elements, thereby providing a powerful data sets which then can be used for producing outcomes. And you have multiple consumers. Your reliability management, your vulnerability management team can use this data to effectively handle those vulnerabilities. But in the context of risk, especially all the compliance requirements that's pretty much coming from all the regulators, and there is pretty much irrespective of your region, there will be some kind of an compliance angle, like either it's simple SOX compliance or you're looking at the complex DORA, NIS2, RBI, and OSFI regulations. Like there are a lot of data points that has to be produced for the auditors to make sure that you are effectively running the operations at scale. So with that note, let's quickly do a deep dive into some of those journey paths I mentioned. So when we think about our customer journey, it is always starting with the data and the data platform, the one data model that curate did by either by a discovery solution or by ingesting service graph connected data. So we build a multi-source view of the landscape. As I said, everything is connected within the platform. So once you have the infrastructure resources discovered in this example, a Linux server ending with 07, you have all the hardware information about the server. You have the upstream, downstream information about the server. You'll have software asset visibility in terms of deployed estates. This is super critical for driving your software asset management outcomes, your end of life, end of support technologies. Some of the compliance do ask for like saying how many of those EOL stacks that you're running know in your infrastructure, what app services know that are impacted. But the most interesting thing with ServiceNow is like building that relationship mapping. This is an dependency mapping technology. It's a service mapping technology where you look into an aspect of an infrastructure and then you put multiple lenses towards viewing that asset, and then you get a comprehensive view of the infrastructure, what applications are running in this example, and Apache is running. But when we showed the journey map, right, one thing that you clearly saw is like, okay, getting asset into your platform is one side, but it is important to connect the dots because when you think about our CSDM data model, this again connects the infrastructure data point of view with the application services, and it adds all the non-discoverable elements like the business services offering, including information objects and so on. And that is one place like where service mapping comes in for a rescue. So in this case, like we have a tech stack that allows you to either do service fingerprints based on very well-known enterprise applications, or you may have a tons of traffic that's happening between those infrastructure elements. I can now look for something starts with SQL Server, and I can easily do a preview map of that specific service where not giving an entry point. I just wanted to understand what is connecting to my SQL Server, and I wanted to add a business perimeter to this entity, and this is what we call this as a service, an application service. And once the app service entity is created, then it will be effectively used in all the workflows because some of the Compliance requirements will enable know the operations team know to produce reports based on services, mission critical services, based on know your customer facing services, and anything that you do with operations should all be connected with that service fingerprint. And for that, like once you build that service map, then I'll show you some examples of how this gets utilized. For example, the typical ITSM processes, right, where you use ServiceNow platform for incident problem change. So when you are thinking about like making that a change record where you are declaring what change has happening on the infrastructure, who is performing the change, when the change is executed, who approved the change. But the most intriguing part is like connecting the intelligence of processes with your configuration item, with your services, so that it's getting recorded in terms of not tying the knots with the services. But at the same time, when you have like say no your events that's pretty much coming into your ecosystem, pretty much you have a lot of monitoring tools. What ServiceNow does, it's very interesting where we kind of looks at all the events and we kind of bind it with the configuration item where we have embedded Now Assist in terms of Gen AI to analyze all the events because some of those events are cryptic in nature. But again, here the interesting thing is like the events are connected with the configuration items, with the services, and in terms of blast radius, right? We are giving that context of what is being impacted by these events. And also we introduced service level measurements with SLI, SLO, and error budgets, where you will be able to measure and meter your service availability and produce those compliance reports to the risk module. The last one I would say is like before I hand over not to Hanish is like the devil is always in the details. Like when we look into all those compliance angle, discovery does a decent job of discovering, for example, a database server. Service mapping can attach the database to an infrastructure that's using it and produce that outcome. But when you think about compliance angle, it is important to connect all the non-discoverable elements. In this example, I have a cloud pass database where you see the upstream, downstream relationships. And for this one, like let's say that like using tags, I can easily add know the service context for this database. But if I want to understand, like, hey, do I have any sensitive data that is sitting inside this database? ServiceNow again came out with a data model called information object, which will allow you to not just like see the infrastructure that is discoverable, in this case a past database sitting in my Azure stack provisioned by the service account, but also you would be able to connect the non-discoverable elements, in this case an employee ID, which clearly states that hey, this is an PII data sitting on this database that's being used for this specific mapped applications, and then you have business offering and applications connected to this. This is one powerful data platform where the entire infrastructure is documented, and you're identifying blueprints on what is connected to what, and then the same blueprint will as service mapping and CSDM will be used for producing multiple outcomes, starting with your ITSM outcomes, your lifecycle management, your event management, AI ops, or event intelligence systems, using that to produce blast radius, to calculate service level measurements, and to produce those compliance data on your availability and no error budgets, or even including on your microservices. And the same will be used by the risk portfolio. So it'll be a perfect segue to listen and learn from the great Anish, who leads the risk product, on how he uses this data to produce those compliance reports. Anish, over to you.
Thanks, Shri. It is exciting. It is exciting that with ServiceNow, so much can be done to show and to ensure our organizations are resilient, right? And we are here to help you. So thanks, Shri. Thanks, Derek, to set the stage. We saw what we can do from the operations management and some of the automation in connecting information objects to what is critical services and the things that could actually go wrong so that you have better understanding. Now, what are the building blocks for building a resilient organization? Let's start with that, right? And this is as per DORA. We spoke about DORA, NIS2, in a sense, very similar. NIS2 more focused from a security perspective, but the foundational elements are exactly the same. Now, whether it is DORA or your flavor of operational resiliency, whether you're operating in Australia, whether in Europe, Canada, India, Japan, AMS, there is a flavor of operational resilience regulatory requirement that's there, and this will apply because the foundation elements are exactly the same. Now, let's focus on DORA today, because that's the foundational piece based on which every regulatory framework or most regulatory frameworks have built on. Now, the 5 pillars from DORA, which is the Digital Operational Resilience Act, as you see over here, information and communication technology risk management, identifying all the building blocks in terms of assets pertaining to information and communication, understanding where they sit, what are they connected, which Sri spoke about, understanding those elements, doing a risk assessment, risk management of it. Incidents and classifications of incidents and reporting to various regulatory authorities in time is an important aspect when those incidents happen. And for those incident management, the connectedness of what is a critical service, what is it driving, what is the business implication, what is the blast radius, all of that becomes really important from a regulatory point of view. Resiliency testing, this is a very core element as part of the regulatory requirement. Everyone knows, including the regulators know, there will be things that will not be fine, that will go wrong. But that's not the problem. What the expectation is to show resiliency, do tests, identify things that could go wrong, proactively do scenario testing, and be prepared in terms of getting back on your feet as soon as possible. That's resiliency. Disruptions will be there, but how do we minimize those? As part of that, third parties are an essential part. Most of our devices, applications could be from third parties, and there comes risk from those third parties. We saw a recent case where it completely brought so many companies down because from a third-party risk perspective. Information and intelligence sharing is also another important aspect, and I'll cover some of those pieces. So I'm going to go into each one of these in a bit. Okay, the foundational elements, the focus is on what is a critical business function within an organization. Internet banking is a critical function if you're a bank, right? You can apply to your business, identifying what those are. Not everything is critical, so you don't have to boil the ocean. What is a critical business service? What are all the different elements that is driving the critical service? In this case, as part of DORA, the important aspect is technology and digital assets that are driving what are the critical services and sub-services that are driving those critical services. If you're looking at operational resilience broadly, it's not just technology asset, people, facility, data, everything else that will drive important critical service, and any of those could go wrong and could bring things down, and resiliency is required. The focus from DORA is digitization and digital assets. So what are those assets? What is all the interconnectedness, which Sri spoke about in terms of service mapping and CMDB connections and third parties that are involved, becomes an essential or the foundational element based on which everything else will work on. Now, what does DORA require from a reporting point of view? This is the biggest challenge. Oh, what do I need? What kind of information? So the various aspects to DORA from a reporting point of view, and what ServiceNow enables you is to focus on faster reporting and accurate reporting, irrespective of whether that information is sitting in ServiceNow or not. The idea is to be able to pull that information from external systems, because there will be information that is sitting outside of ServiceNow or any of your platforms. But what ServiceNow allows you to pull that information from ServiceNow as well as external systems. When I say within ServiceNow, the IT operations management piece that Sri spoke about, information from vulnerability, information from incidents, information, what is the regulatory obligation, those kinds of things can easily be interconnected. So you can pull those information. The information can be verified and modified and updated one at a time or bulk. Both options are available to make life easier, and then click on a button, extract a report in exactly the same format the regulators expect you to report. Every column, every information in exactly the same terminology that is made available, so that you don't have to spend time and your teams don't have to spend time in putting this information together. And anytime there's a manual effort, it takes time and it could be error prone. And you don't want to send something wrong to the regulators and face additional scrutiny. We're trying to solve all of that and make life easier. Of course, DORA as a regulation is new, it's changing, new formats, new templates, reporting requirements keep coming. We are very agile. ServiceNow, we've introduced the DORA reporting. This is already available. We already know some formats have changed. We will be releasing updates to those formats so that you don't have to worry. We got you covered. Now, as part of risk management, what is an essential part from doing a risk assessment of the foundational elements? Now, if you look at it, there are so many different aspects. Technology and cyber risk is what we're going to focus. Third-party risk is another area we're going to focus, but connected to business continuity and resiliency and reporting to DORA. And this could be NIST 2 or other frameworks too. Now, as part of that, ability to do risk assessment from any dimension you want to understand overall, is it within your risk appetite? What is your risk tolerance? How is the risk moving? You can define your own scales, whether you want 3-point scale of impact likelihood, or a high, medium, low, or go granular, 5-point scale or 7-point scale, doesn't matter. You want to have your own different attributes based on which you want to do risk assessment. The platform allows you to do the way you want. DORA does not say exactly how you have to do the risk assessment. It's up to the organization, depending on the maturity of the organization, of how you want to do your risk assessments and show it to your stakeholders and to the regulators. Important aspect as part of risk assessment, it's not a one-off, it's not once a quarter, it's not once a year, kind of an exercise that used to happen many years ago. It has to be on a continuous basis. So continuous risk monitoring and metric collection in real time adds significant value, because that gives you real-time enterprise risk posture and the ability for senior executives and your teams to act quickly before it's too late. And ability to visualize and simplifying reporting to the regulator, reporting to your stakeholders in your board, so that they understand, okay, this is an area that needs to be invested, why they need to invest, and how things may be going well and some areas not going very well, instead of long reports. Now, regulatory compliance, as I mentioned, it's evolving, it's changing. But the ability to convert those regulatory frameworks, to be able to track those regulatory changes, understanding what is the implication of that change that is coming, having the organization prepared to meet those regulatory obligations, and to track in terms of what policies you may update or roll out, connected to controls and checkpoints that you put in place to ensure you're well protected, not just from a regulatory obligation perspective, but as a best practice and a good practice for the organization to be resilient. Now, the regulatory frameworks help and guide what needs to be done, so it serves as a checklist, but that's the purpose of the technology, to help you. Now, what the compliance view helps is understand, okay, these are all the different types of compliances that you care. You may be operating in different parts of the world and it may cover different areas of compliance, but to understand, okay, how are we doing from each one? There may be some areas where there's more focus that's needed, more controls, more or strengthening existing controls. And those are the things that can be surfaced based on the information that is being pulled from different parts within ServiceNow and outside ServiceNow, to show you from a compliance exposure and compliance risk perspective. Helps you be covered from a regulatory compliance. So as part of continuous monitoring, it's not just continuously monitoring, it's also continuously collecting that evidence that's required to prove to the regulators that, yes, you were monitoring these controls, here is the evidence. So at any point in time, if you have to prove to the regulators that the control worked or failed, and what was the evidence, what was the basis, that information is already there. You're audit ready, right? You don't have to scramble your way through before an audit trying to collect all this information. So continuous monitoring is an absolutely critical thing when you're looking at scale and you have few resources to run your program. Now, business continuity, this should not be new to anyone. Business continuity has been there forever, but from an IT disaster recovery, and then now it's evolved to more operational resiliency. And if you look at operational resilience, it covers third-party risk, it covers business continuity, it covers operational risk, in a sense, foundationally, right? And operational resilience is the larger umbrella of it. As part of business continuity, what are the critical services? What are all the interconnected areas? And which ones do not have a business continuity plan? That's foundational. But how do you surface those things to say, okay, what requires the business continuity plan, what doesn't, and where you may have to prioritize business continuity plans, doing scenario tests, doing dry runs, ensuring the information is always updated. So based on the information on CMDB, business continuity plans and your RTOs, which is your recovery time objectives, and RPOs, are always updated so that you're aligned to latest updates based on the status of your assets. If there is ownership change, you want to know, you want to reflect that on your business continuity plans. If there is a new version that is updated, things have changed, so your scope has changed, which means the business continuity plan has to change. It cannot be a stale SharePoint document which has no connection with what's happening in real life, which means when a crisis hits, the business continuity plan will not execute well because the application status, interconnectedness, and the landscape has changed, but your business continuity plans haven't evolved. So it becomes really important to have the business continuity plans connected to what Sri was talking about, right? In each of these nodes, if you think of that visualization, map visualization, it becomes important to understand, okay, what is critical, what could go wrong, and is there a business continuity plan? And is that business continuity plan updated? Have we tested it out on a continuous basis to ensure when things go wrong, it will work? And that's how operational resiliency can be proven, right? Which means identifying critical business services, things that are connected. What are the different red flags? How many of them are important? How many of them are not so important? How many of them have breached tolerances that you have set for yourself? Or there are things that have been set and given by the regulators. How many red flags? How many failed controls? How many risks? How many outages? How many vulnerabilities, right? Whether it is technical vulnerability or operational vulnerabilities, how many of them, and what do they mean to the business, becomes an important aspect to surface. The same interface works for technology, cyber risk, as well as for other areas. If you're looking at suppliers and processes, and services and people and data, you can have various pillars and define and see resiliency from their perspective. Think of it, if HR wants to use the same interface to see people resiliency, they can easily look at the chief human resource officer. So the CHRO can see from his or her perspective. Technology team can see from their perspective. The supplier team can see from their perspective. But all of that comes together to prove resiliency. And most of it is driven by technology today, and has a strong play anyways. Another important aspect is all of this becomes important based on the information that's already available and connected. But there are always black swan events. So how do you document various scenarios and plan for those scenarios that might not have happened in the past, but could happen in the future? But how do you plan for some of those things and be prepared, including business continuity plans, backup plans, plan Bs and things like that, that's necessary. All of this comes with a native integration and ability to pull information from ITOM, ITSM, ITAM, SecOps, and different ServiceNow products, as well as information from outside ServiceNow. Now, the next part, so all we saw was just pure risk management perspective. Now, when we move on from an incident reporting, as soon as an incident comes, it doesn't matter where the incident comes from, right? Whether it's from a security incident, major incidents, external threats, other risk events that may happen. So there is a process of ensuring that incident is contained. That's a workflow that you see over here. But then there is also another aspect of, okay, does this qualify for it to be reported to different regulators depending on where it happened? Let's take an example if it is a privacy breach, which means depending on what kind of data was compromised, where it needs to be reported, who it needs to be reported, and on what time it needs to be reported, and becomes really critical. And that's where the incident reporting case gets elevated into, okay, what is the context? What is the assessment, risk assessment of this? And what is the obligation from a reporting point of view to the regulators? All that can be streamlined because there are standard templates that can be put in place so that all you have to do is click on a button. It pulls the information, the latest information that's required to be submitted to the regulators. Many regulators ask for information to be updated on a regular basis, which means, okay, what happened to the incident? Where is it? How is it being resolved on a, a frequent basis? Makes it easier. Today, those may be emails and conversations and scrambling to put things together before it's sent out. And any information you put out becomes very sensitive. So you have to be very careful with that. So this is a visualization of, okay, how incident reporting case is created. It tells you information from a DORA reporting point of view. What is the timeline for it to be reported? SLAs, what reporting status, if it's potentially reportable or not, so that you know if you have to act on it quickly before it's too late. And then to be able to do a risk assessment on it based on the criteria to say, okay, what is the reputational impact? What is, data loss aspects? What is the geographical spread for this incident so that the regulators can be informed about it? But all those assessments can be done in a very easy fashion. Now, depending on what flavor of regulation that you're following, whether it's NIS2, DORA, or some other regulation, the framework allows you to define your own criteria based on what regulation needs or what you may have specifically for your own better risk management perspective. It can be completely configured. Nothing is hardwired. And then to be able to easily export that report in the format that regulators expect. As you can see the button over here from a DORA perspective, you can click on the button, say export the initial report. It picks up the information that is needed in the format required to be shared, and you're off. So no one is manually sitting and working on a Word document or PowerPoint or Excel file, crafting that information together. And before you send it out, you realize that, oh, there was an update 5 minutes ago that needs to be worked upon and updated. So some of those things can be simplified. Now, from a digital resiliency testing perspective, Sri spoke about this. So I'm not going to repeat this again, but the fact that for resiliency testing, what becomes important is to understand the landscape, understand the touch points, what are the things that are driving things for your business, and to continuously monitor each one of them intelligently, every event, and also look at from logs, events, to be able to predict, to be able to respond, to be able to improve your service level health visibility, and from a budget management, because there'll be a lot of errors, things you don't want things to go down, and to be able to overall automate this process. It's hard to do this manual, right? You really need a workflow-driven remediation method, ability to process alert and to be able to understand these alerts, simplify it, and as much as possible self-heal, right? And that's when it becomes more resilient. So those are the things that what Sri was covering and was showing will help in the overall journey. This is another view that Sri had shown. It ensures timely response because it surfaces the information on time with respect to MTTA and MTTR. It also helps you prioritize which ones require attention from an SRE point of view to meet the objectives. It helps you reduce the noise so that the teams can focus on what is important. It also helps reduce friction across different teams, and it also provides you guided experience so that teams can onboard faster and can empower teams to get stuff done and provide reliability across your enterprise. Just skip this. And then now what happens is from advanced digital operational testing, which is threat-led penetration testing. It should be TLPT, not TPLT. But the idea is to be able to scope, identify, and get threat intel to identify what are the different threat actors, motivation, models, do some threat modeling and scenario modeling to be able to identify, to be able to create a plan. These are all the possible things that could happen. Identify the participant, send set communication protocols, and have a project plan from a planning point of view so that you can readily execute and exactly what needs to be done when things happen. So that no one is thinking about, okay, in this scenario, how should we execute? There is a good business continuity plan and a threat-led penetration testing scope. And then the final report about how things have gotten better and the findings and observations so that those remediation actions can be put in place. The next piece is a third party. So as part of DORA, I think it's almost like 30% of what DORA has asked to do is all about third parties and suppliers. So as part of that, it becomes really important to understand how you're onboarding your third parties, what are the contracts with your third parties, ability to assess them at different phases, onboarding due diligence, ongoing due diligence, and offboarding due diligence. Ongoing due diligence becomes really important as part of resiliency, not just onboarding. So on a continuous basis, assessing them, understanding the findings, working with the third party in terms of remediating those issues, report those risks to your senior stakeholders and also with your third parties and monitor them on a regular basis and ensure your critical third parties who are delivering your critical services are clearly known to the organization so there is more collaboration and resiliency plans put in place. And of course, there will be third parties who do not do very well, in which case you need to have a plan B. If something goes wrong or they do not align to your goals from organization, the ability to retire them and to transition over to some other third party. But overall, third party becomes a significant role in ensuring your resiliency. It's not just about yourself, your extended enterprise, which is your third parties and fourth parties. It's also important to understand third parties and different kinds of engagement that you may be doing with your third parties. So it's not just about the third party. You may have 5 different relationships with your third party. Not everything will be at the same level of risk and concern. So ability to tier them by different relationships or engagements you're having and to map, okay, what are the critical services this third party is delivering with this relationship. There may be one relationship that is more critical, others may not be. So ability to go down that detail and understand that. So this is a view of looking at due diligence. And I mentioned about ongoing and inherent risk questionnaire to be sent out. Either it could be manual questionnaire or intelligence that can bring in and look at it proactively, how third parties are managed in terms of if they undergo, if they have a breach and how they are managing the data, how different systems and backup plans and policies and compliance requirements they meet has an implication on your organization. So getting that information on a real-time basis becomes important, both proactively and reactively. Reactively, when an incident happens, how are they reacting and what implications that may have to your organization. So that is all part of the third-party risk management piece. Now, as I mentioned, 30% of the regulation is all about, specifically DORA is about third parties. And what DORA expects is the contract information is made available to them. And what we've done is ability to download that information from ServiceNow, which is the register of information pertaining to your third party and contracts, to be able to easily download, or not just contracts, the different foundational elements that are required to be reported. Click of a button, as I mentioned, you can get that done. Now, information and intelligence sharing, right? Using the Threat Intel Security Center of ServiceNow, data can be collected, and the incident response coordination and threat analysis using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, all of that can be made easily available to ensure you are covered from this pillar as well, from a operational resilience perspective, including threat hunting and various other things that falls under this bucket. Now, as you can see over here, ServiceNow provides a complete solution for DORA, whether it's risk assessments, incident management, operational resilience testing, third-party risk testing, information intelligence sharing. This is exactly what the pillars are expected from DORA point of view, the 5 pillars. Now, there are different product lines in ServiceNow: integrated risk management, business continuity management, security operations, IT operation management, which Sri and Derek covered, ITSM, security incident response, vulnerability response, configuration compliance, third-party risk, threat intelligence, security center, all play their own different roles. Do you need all of them? Not necessary. You may have your own tools that you may be using for some of those things that can be leveraged, but it'll be great. It'll be easy if all of them are using ServiceNow. If you're already using ServiceNow for some of these things, information can easily be surfaced and your DORA requirements can be met easily. But what you're trying to do is simplifying reporting requirements, irrespective of what you're using the capabilities in the platform. Of course, the foundation elements, the CMDB, the software asset, hardware assets, the service mapping of, okay, what is a critical service, what application, what software assets, hardware assets, and all of this come together is the foundational element for everything else that you see on the top. Now let's do a quick demo so that you get a flavor of, okay, what does it look like? What are we talking about? So I'm going to, as expected, just going to log back.
There are 2 questions. Maybe you can answer them live while
Sure.
you're in. So if you
Yeah.
can open the Q&A box, or maybe Derek, just help me out.
Yeah, if you can read the question out.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So DORA has 7 domains of incident categories, which should be reflected amongst other information to risk profiles of incidents, which should drive risk metrics. Do you have a prepared risk metrics for these DORA domains?
What we can cater to the requirement. Do we ship anything out of the box? We don't ship the metrics out of the box, but it's completely configurable framework. Because what we have seen is one is the regulatory requirement, and one is what organization interprets that and manages that from their own mature risk practice point of view. So we made it completely configurable and flexible to meet your objectives and requirement.
Okay.
The answer is it can meet the requirements easily.
Okay.
When I say configurable, it is configurable, it's not customization.
Awesome. Okay, the next one, do you also support information flow, extraction, anonymization, etc. for DORA TLPT, red, blue, purple, white team concerns?
We do support anonymization as part of the platform, it's privacy vault, so that is supported. I am not sure. I need to get back to you on the other aspects. I don't want to give you wrong information.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
That's it for right now.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. So, so I'll cover this quickly. So what you're seeing over here is the operational resilience workspace or dashboard, and what it starts is what are your active business services these are business services. So when I open business services, you would see this is an example of bank, and you can see different business services over here. And what are the red flags for these business services? Here, 15 business services, and it shows there are quite a few red flags that needs to be focused on. Services by importance, how many of them are critical, most critical, and somewhat critical, by tolerance. And it also shows information to the operational resilience manager and about total red flags and where the problem is. There are 18 failed controls. There are 3 outages, 7 change requests, and 5 operational vulnerabilities. And of course, you can drill down into each one of these to find out more information. You can also find out from where the problem is. In this case, technology risk is not as bad. There's plenty from a supplier's perspective over here that is cause of concern. So you can drill down and see what those suppliers are so that you can act on it differently, right? People is the least over here, which is great. And then various activities in terms of the importance and impact assessments. One of the critical aspects is to be able to tier your critical services. What is important critical service? And you do that using an assessment. Using scenario analysis to also understand, okay, what could go wrong, as I spoke about, and to be able to document those scenarios and to prove to the regulators that, yeah, there were various scenarios considered, so that you can also take in feedback of scenarios to be considered, which might not have been as part of your plan, to make it more robust. Self-attestations of your policy and compliance, so that every business owner or process owner or control owner can self-attest that they have looked at their area of ownership and whether it's effectively operating or not. It also highlights what controls need the most attention, where the most problems are from a controls point of view. If you see, for example, MFA has higher set of problems that needs to be focused on, and a few others as well. Thankfully, no risk to be mitigated. Looks like things are still not too bad. Now, if you shift over to the pillars, now this is where it gets interesting. You can define your own pillars, as I mentioned, from a DORA point of view, which is not from DORA, but from an operational resilience perspective, about people, process, service, suppliers, and technology. Now let's focus on technology since we are talking about DORA. So what this shows is there are 16 dependencies to deliver 5 services, okay? Now, when I say 5 services, it gives you, okay, here are the 5 services. Now, let's take digital banking, and these are all the different services, technical services that are helping drive the digital banking as a business service. So it gives you that view. And then, of course, there are 16 different dependencies. The red flags over here are there are 16 assets which do not have a business continuity plan, which is a problem. Because if these are critical business services, and 16 of the interconnected pieces or the dependencies here do not have a continuity plan, which immediately needs attention. Great, there is nothing over here that has not been recovered recently from a DR exercise, so it looks like good. The fact that DR exercises are happening and none found. Major open incidents as one, so we know that it's not too bad, but still something that surfaced. Overall control effectiveness, a number of issues, and just from a technology perspective, what are the top controls that needs to be strengthened? MFA comes top again over here. The same view can be looked from a supplier's perspective, and you can see there are 23 dependencies to support these same five services and similar information over here. So for example, looks like approvals before finalizing a vendor does not exist, and a control that needs to be strengthened. Maybe existing, but not working very well. So it can surface different pieces over here from a resiliency point of view. Now, let's switch gears to specifically from a DORA perspective, ability to define what is important and what is your tolerance. Having scenario analysis done and documenting various scenarios, right? So you'll see all the various scenarios over here. And then self-attestation, list of all your business services, documenting all your operational vulnerability. These are not technical vulnerabilities. You can also have technical vulnerabilities, but also operational vulnerabilities that may exist that needs to be documented. And then digital resiliency, third-party register, which is, how do you do assessment, the information on the branches, contract information, functions, legal entities, supply chains, third parties, and to be able to report to the regulators in an easy way. So for example, if I take my reg report, an existing report that I had created, I go over here, pick the contract, and then say export information over. I'm just going to say December 2024. Okay. And here is the report that is generated. Let me expand this in a bit. So you could see the template. It has the information that is needed in exactly the format DORA expects. The best entity details, the country, location, and exactly in what they have expected, each of these with a prefix. And there are various tabs over here that talks about, okay, what kind of information is required. And you can see the number of tabs over here. And so this is just one example of how the information can be automated to pick that information and send to the regulators. Now, one of these information changes, you don't have to scramble. You can just go and say, export the report, latest information is picked up and brought in over here. So that's what I wanted to cover as part of today's demo. I know we are 1 minute and just almost top of the hour, but if there's any questions, happy to take those questions. Me, myself, Sri, and Derek are here.
Yeah, we don't have any questions in the Q&A right now.
Okay.
Can you just go to the next slide real quick? I just want to thank everybody for joining. Appreciate your participation, and I just want to let you know that you can join us for future webinars and meetups. Once again, you can scan the QR code. Hold on, looks like we do. Oh, thanks, great session. All right, and yeah, we will have future events, so please, check out our upcoming events. And then one more slide here. If you can go to the next slide, Anish. Yeah, if you want to watch any of the past webinars, you can go to the community page, either scanning the link or scanning the barcode or the QR code, or going to the link that I believe John also pasted in the chat. Once again, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your interaction, and hope this session was very beneficial to you. And if you could, please make sure that you respond to the Q&A, just so we know how to improve these sessions in the future. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Anish and Sri, for your excellent presentations and demos.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Sri. Thanks, everyone.